almost sorry not to use it. A sudden thought came into my head as I stooped towards the portal. For once, at least, I grasped the mental operations of the Morlocks. Suppressing a strong inclination to laugh, I stepped through the bronze.
Hey, you guys, also Sean here, and I'm here to show you how to trace out T.I. Sorry for hitting the camera. I've been doing this for a couple of days. My Tourette's was acting crazy with me. Mom looking at me like, what's wrong with your hands? I'm like, I don't know. But I'm going to trace out T.I. I should have did it earlier, but didn't feel like getting up to do it, so trace out T.I. Hopefully I won't make no mistakes. I have to do it over again. You know, I never was a fan of T.I. because T.I. never could really rap to me. Try to do what I do. I'm trying to scope out his outfit right now. Never was a fan of T.I. My sister, she used to be a fan of T.I. But T.I. act like he ain't got too bright in the head. Yeah, like he ain't got too bright in the head, but yeah. Somebody else act like they ain't got too bright in the head. Tyrese don't act like he got too good in the head, neither. Let's see, let's finish up. Excuse my shaking hands, because it's really cutting up on me. I'm listening to the audio book of The Time Machine. Thanksgiving coming up, celebrate Thanksgiving holiday by listening to stories. This is Nicholas right here on the side. I'm not gonna lie, like the Time Machine audiobook ain't on a little bit of the sad side, but also is on the excitement side. You feel so much energy from it, you know.
For an indefinite time, I clung to the machine as it swayed and vibrated, quite unheeding how I went. And when I brought myself to look at the dials again, I was amazed to find where I had arrived. One dial records days, and another thousands of days, another millions of days, and another thousands of millions. Now, instead of reversing the levers, I had pulled them over so as to go forward with them.
I might gonna have to do T.I. over again because my hands, they really acting crazy with me. And if I have to do T.I. over again, that's okay, because I still got Kiki Watts that I can finish up on.
Then, though I was still traveling with prodigious velocity, the blinking succession of day and
Kiki
night,
Watts.
which was usually indicative of a slower pace, returned, and more
you know, T.I. got a funny made nose. He got a funny made nose.
Alternations of night and day grew slower and slower, and so did the passage of the sun across the sky, until they seemed to stretch
I don't know from
at last,
Mom, do I need to do T.I. over again or not?
When a comet glared across the darkling sky, the band of light that had indicated the sun had long since disappeared, for the sun had ceased to set. It simply rose and fell in the west, and grew ever broader and more red. All trace of the moon had vanished. The circling of the stars, growing slower and slower, had given place to creeping points of light. At last, some time before I stopped, the sun, very red and very large, halted motionless upon the horizon, a vast dome glowing with a dull heat, and now and then suffering a momentary extinction. At one time, it had for a little while glowed more brilliantly again, but it speedily reverted to its sullen red heat. I perceived by this slowing down of its rising and setting that the work of the tidal drag was done. The earth had come to rest with one very cautiously, for I remembered my former headlong fall, and began to reverse my motion. Slower and slower went the circling hands, until the thousandth one seemed motionless.
Alright, so I got that done nowhere.
Was no longer a mere mist upon its scale. Still slower until the dim outlines of a desolate beach grew visible.
Let me
I stopped very gently and sat around.
let me see.
The sky
What I
was
want to
no
do to
longer
T.I.
blue.
I guess gonna
Northeastward,
work on
it
his
was being
skin.
black, and out of the blackness
I'm gonna get
shone
T.I.
brightly
the
and
same
steadily
complexion
the
that I
pale white
gave
stars. Overhead, it was a
Rihanna.
deep Indian red and starless, and southeastward it grew brighter to a glowing
That's
scarlet,
fair.
where, cut by the horizon, lay the huge hull of the sun, red and motionless. The rocks about me were of a harsh reddish color, and all the trace of life that I could see at first was the intensely green vegetation that covered every projecting point on their southeastern face. It was the same rich green that one sees on forest moss or on the lichen in caves, plants which, like these, grow in a perpetual twilight. The machine was standing on a sloping beach. The sea stretched away to the southwest to rise into a sharp, bright horizon against the wan sky. There were no breakers and no waves, for not a breath of wind was stirring. Only a slightly oily swell rose and
I'm gonna
fell
use
like a
the Crazy
gentle wave,
Art
and
black
showed
to
that the
go with his
eternal
nose
sea
with.
was still moving and living. And along the margin, where the water sometimes broke, was a thick incrustation of salt.
You know, he has a funny made nose, so I don't know what to say, but
that I was breathing very fast.
let me go and do what I need to do so I can get over it. Try not to smudge too. Try not to smudge.
I judged the air to be more rarefied than it is now. Far away up the desolate slope, I heard a harsh scream.
Oh, forget
Saw a
something.
thing like a huge white butterfly go slanting and flittering up into the sky and circling, disappear over some low hillocks beyond. The sound of its voice was so dismal that I shivered and seated myself more firmly upon the machine. Looking round me again, I saw that quite near, what I had taken to be a reddish mass of rock was moving slowly towards me. Then I saw the thing was really a monstrous crab-like creature. Can you imagine a crab as large as yonder table, with its many legs moving slowly and uncertainly, its big claws swinging, its long antennae, like carter's whips, waving and feeling, and its stalked eyes gleaming at you at either side of its metallic front?
Alright, so now I'm going to put down the yellow.
Ornamented with ungainly bosses, and a greenish incrustation blotched it here and there. I could see the many palps of its complicated mouth flickering and feeling as it moved.
Like I said, I might need to do TIO again because of my Tourette's and the lupus. The lupus, it's been messing with my vision.
I tried to brush it away with my hand, but in a moment it returned, and almost immediately came another by my ear. I struck at this and caught something thread-like. It was drawn swiftly out of my hand. With a frightful qualm, I turned and saw that I had grasped the antenna of another monster crab that stood just behind me. Its evil eyes were wriggling on their stalks. Its mouth was all alive with appetite, and its vast, ungainly claws, smeared with an algal slime, were descending upon me. In a moment, my hand was on the lever, and I placed a month between myself and these monsters. But I was still on the same beach, and saw them distinctly now as soon as I stopped. Dozens of them seemed to be crawling here and there, in the somber light among the foliated sheets of intense green. I cannot convey the sense of abominable desolation that hung over the world. The red eastern sky, the northward blackness,
That was the premier color, white, yellow, and this is the premier color, orange.
The uniform, poisonous-looking green of the lichenous plants, the thin air that hurts one's lungs, all contributed to an appalling effect. I moved dying sea, the same chill air, and the same crowd of earthy crustacea creeping in and out of the green weed and the red rocks. And in the westward sky, I saw a curved pale line like a vast new moon. So I traveled, stopping ever and again, in great strides of 1,000 years or more, drawn on by the mystery of the earth's fate, watching with a strange fascination the sun grow larger and duller in the westward sky, and the light of the old earth ebb away. At last, more than 30 billion years hence, the huge red-hot dome of the sun had come to obscure nearly a tenth part of the darkening heavens. Then I stopped once more, for the crawling multitude of crabs had disappeared, and the red beach, save for its livid green liverworts and lichens, seemed lifeless. And
Now,
was flecked
I'm
with
gonna get
white,
my
a bitter cold
toasted
assailed me,
toffee.
where white
Everything
flakes
just falling
ever and
on
again
me, just
came
falling
beating
on
down.
me.
To the northeastward, the glare of snow lay under the starlight of the sable sky, and I could see an undulating crest of hillocks pinkish white. There were fringes of ice along the sea margin, with drifting masses further out,
And we're gonna,
but the main
help
expanse of
darken his
that
skin
salt
down.
ocean, all bloody under the eternal sunset, was still unfrozen.
But not
I
dark,
looked
because
about me,
T.I.'s not
seeing
dark
many
color
traces of animal life remaining.
person. Man,
A certain indefinable
but
apprehension
help get rid
still
of some of
kept me
the
in the saddle of the machine.
orange.
But I saw nothing moving, in earth or sky or sea. The green slime on the rocks alone testified that life was not extinct. A shallow sandbank that appeared in the sea and the water had receded from the beach. I fancied I saw some black object flopping about upon this bank, but it became motionless as I looked at it, and I judged that my eye had been deceived, and that the black object was merely a rock. The stars in the sky were intensely bright, and seemed to me to twinkle very little. Suddenly, I noticed that the circular westward outline of the sun had changed, that a concavity, a bay, had appeared in the curve. I saw this grow larger. For a minute, perhaps, I stared aghast at this blackness that was creeping over the day, and then I realized that an eclipse was beginning. Either the moon or the planet Mercury was passing across the sun's disk. Naturally, at first I
Let's
took it
see.
to be the moon,
Move
but
this out
there's
my way
much
to
to
chair.
incline me to believe that what I really saw was the transit of an inner planet
I'm gonna go over
passing
it
very
again
near to the
on
Earth.
certain parts of it.
The darkness grew apace. A cold wind began to blow in freshening gusts from the east, and the showering white flakes in the air increased in number. From the edge of the sea came a ripple.
I'm gonna go over on certain areas
Beyond these lifeless
to help
sounds,
darken
the
it
world
down.
was silent.
Well, really just the shadow.
It would be hard
I'm
to
going
convey
over
the
it with the
stillness of
shadow.
it. All the sounds of man, the bleating of sheep, the cries of birds, the hum of insects, the stir that makes the background of our lives, all that was over. As the darkness thickened, the eddying flakes grew more abundant, dancing before my eyes, and the cold of the air more intense. At last, one by one, swiftly, one after the other, the white peaks of the distant hills vanished into blackness. The breeze rose to a moaning wind. I saw the black central shadow of the eclipse sweeping towards me. In another moment, the pale stars alone were visible. All else was rayless obscurity. The sky was absolutely black. A horror of this great darkness came on me. The cold that smote to my marrow, and the pain I felt in breathing overcame me. I shivered, and a deadly nausea seized me. Then, like a red-hot bow in the sky, appeared the edge of the sun. I got off the machine to recover myself. I felt giddy and incapable of facing the return journey. As I stood sick and confused, I saw again the moving thing upon the shore.
Now I'm gonna get the white.
There was no mistake
I'm
now.
do
It
this
was
too.
the moving thing against the red water of the sea. It was a round
Now I'll
thing,
get the
the size
Premier
of a
Color
football,
white.
perhaps, or it may be bigger. And
and go over the areas with this.
It seemed black against the weltering blood-red water, and it was hopping fitfully about. Then I felt I was fainting. But a terrible dread of lying helpless in that remote and awful twilight sustained me.
And not taking the white older areas that I did not shade.
End of chapter 11. Chapter 12.
That did not shade.
So I came back. For a long time I must have been insensible
now
on the machine.
We're going to get the
Succession of the days and nights.
Crayola
The sun got golden.
white,
The
the crazy art white, and just blend everything on out. But try to, because I don't have much Crayola white left.
At last, I saw again the dim shadows of houses, the evidences of decadent humanity.
Tell you one thing, whoever made this had a good idea.
Presently, when the million dial was at zero, I slackened speed. I began to recognize our own petty, familiar architecture. The thousands hand ran back to the starting point. The day and night flapped slower and slower. Then the old walls of the laboratory came round me. Very gently now, I slowed the mechanism down. I saw one little thing that seemed odd to me. I think I've told you that when I set out, before my velocity became very high, Mrs. Watchett had walked across the room, traveling, as it seemed to me, like a rocket. As I returned, I passed again across that minute when she traversed the laboratory. But now, her every motion appeared to be the exact inversion of her previous ones. The door at the lower end opened, and she glided quietly up the laboratory, back foremost, and disappeared behind the door by which she had previously entered. Just before that, I seemed to see Hillier for a moment, but he passed like a flash. Then I stopped the machine and saw about
If you don't have a lot of arm muscles, this is a good way for you to give it.
Just as I left them.
This is a good way for you to get these arm muscles.
And sat down upon my bench. For several minutes.
But you'll have it probably in one arm.
Around me was my old workshop again, exactly as it had been. I might have slept there, and the whole thing had been a dream. And yet, not exactly. The thing had started from the southeast corner of the laboratory. It had come to rest again in the northwest, against the wall where you saw it. That gives you the exact distance from my little lawn to the pedestal of the White Sphinx, into which the Morlocks had carried my machine. For a time, my brain went stagnant. Presently, I got up and came through the passage here, limping because my heel was still painful, and feeling sorely begrimed. I saw the Pall Mall Gazette on the table by the door. I found the date was indeed today, and looking at the timepiece, saw the hour was almost 8 o'clock. I heard your voices and the clatter of plates. I hesitated. I felt so sick and weak.
I want this something else too.
And opened the door on you. You know the rest. I washed and dined, and now I am telling you the story. I know,
Okay.
he said after a pause, that all this will be absolutely incredible to you. To me, the one incredible thing is that I am here tonight in this old familiar room, looking into your friendly faces and telling you these strange adventures. He looked at the medical man. No, I cannot expect you to believe it. Take it as a lie or a prophecy. Say I dreamed it in the workshop. Consider I have been speculating upon the destinies of our race until I have hatched this fiction.
Okay, so I got that done.
As a mere stroke of art to
The
enhance
outline
its
shading and everything. So
interest.
now
Taking it as a story, what do you think of it?
I want to
This pipe,
let me see.
It began in his old accustomed manner to tap with it nervously upon the bars of the grate. There was a momentary stillness. Then chairs began
Just
to
I think I'm just gonna reuse it. I was gonna like do like a shading, but
I took my eyes off the
I saw what was the name of that
and
movie
looked
that
round
T.I. did with Denzel
They were
Washington.
in the dark, and little spots of
I liked it the way he wore his hair in that movie. I thought it was so classy, you know. And I just liked the way he looked in that movie. What was it? American Gangster? I don't know, it was a hustler. I just, I really don't remember, but that's how I'm gonna do his hair. I'm gonna do his hair like that movie because he looked nice up in there. I ain't gonna lie.
Well, I thought not. The time traveler turned to us. Where are the matches? He said. He lit one and spoke over his pipe, puffing. To tell you the truth, I hardly believe it myself. And yet, his eye fell with a mute inquiry upon the withered white flowers upon the little table. Then he turned over the hand holding his pipe, and I saw he was looking at some half-healed scars on his knuckles. The medical man rose, came to the lamp, and examined the flowers. The gymnasium's odd, he said. The psychologist leaned forward to see, holding out his hand for a specimen. I'm hanged if it isn't 1:45, said the journalist. How shall we get home? Plenty of cabs at the station, said the psychologist. It's a curious thing, said the medical man, but I certainly don't know the natural order of these flowers. May I have them? The time traveler
There's something else I want to do
then
too.
certainly not. Where did you really get them? Said the medical man. The time traveler put his hand to his head. He spoke like one who was trying to keep hold of an idea that eluded him. They were put into my pocket by William when I traveled into time. He stared around the room. And then it was all going. This room.
I'm taking my crazy art white and going smoothing it out
Did I
with it.
ever make a time machine? Or a model of a time machine? Or is it all only a dream? They say life is a dream. A precious poor dream at times. But I can't stand another that won't fit. It's madness. And where did the dream come from? I must look at that machine.
Alright, so I got that down. Now I'm gonna do his eyes, but what color eyes do T.I. have? I don't know, so I'm just gonna put in the Premier color dark brown because I don't know what color eyes that he have.
Solid to the touch, for I put out my hand and felt the rail of it, and with brown spots and smears upon the ivory, and bits of grass and moss upon the lower parts, and one rail bent awry. The time traveler put the lamp down on the bench and ran his hand along the damaged rail.
It's the Premier color dark
It's all
brown.
right now, he said. The story I told you was true. I'm sorry to have brought you out here in the cold. He took up the lamp, and in an absolute silence, we returned to the smoking room. He came into the hall with us and helped the editor on with his coat. The medical man looked into his face, and with a certain hesitation, told him he was suffering from overwork, at which he laughed hugely. I remember him standing in the open doorway, bawling good night. I shared a cab with the editor. He thought the tale a gaudy lie. For my own part, I was unable to come to a conclusion. The story was so fantastic and incredible, the telling so credible and sober. I lay awake most of the night thinking about it. I determined to go next day and see the time traveler again. I was told he was in the laboratory, and being on easy terms at the house, I went up to him. The laboratory, however,
Yeah, I like that more better.
I stared for a minute at the time machine, put out my hand and touched the lever.
Let's do his jacket. He had a blue jean jacket on with a black shirt.
Its instability startled me extremely, and I had a queer reminiscence of the childish days when I used to be forbidden to meddle. I came back through the corridor. The time traveler met me in the smoking room. He was coming from the house. He had a small camera under one arm and a knapsack under the other. He laughed when he saw me and gave me an elbow to shake. I'm frightfully
Taking
busy,
the Premier
said
Color
he,
yellow
with
for
that thing in
negatives.
there. But is it not some hoax?
And I used
said,
the Crazy Art
really travel through
black
time?
for his shirt.
And truly, I do.
Now I need to find my
And he
blue
looked
jean
frankly into my eyes.
pencil. Oh, here it is. No, that's
As
light
I
blue.
wandered about the room, I only want half an hour, he
Blue
said.
jean.
I know why you came.
This
and
is
it's
the
awfully
Crazy
good of you.
Art blue
There's some
jean.
magazines here. If you'll stop to lunch, I'll prove you this time traveling up to the hilt, specimen and all. If you'll forgive my leaving you now. I consented, hardly comprehending then the full import of his words.
Just the blue
And he
jean.
nodded and went on.
I'm not going to add any special features to it because it's getting late.
Seated myself in a chair
And I'm trying to
and
make
took
good
up my
time.
paper. What was he going to do before lunchtime? Then suddenly, I was reminded by an advertisement that I had promised to meet Richardson, the publisher, at 2. I looked at my watch and saw that I could barely save that engagement. I got up and went down the passage to tell the time traveler. As I took hold of the handle of the door, I heard an exclamation, oddly truncated at the end, and a click and a thud. A gust of air whirled round me as I opened the door, and from within came the sound of broken glass falling on the floor. The time traveler was not there. I seemed to see a ghostly, indistinct figure sitting in a whirling mass of black brass for a moment, a figure so transparent that the bench behind with its sheets of drawings was absolutely distinct. But this phantasm vanished as I rubbed my eyes. The time machine had gone. Save for a subsiding stir of dust, the further end of the laboratory was empty. A pane of the skylight had, apparently, just been blown in. I felt an unreasonable amazement. I knew that something strange had happened, and for the moment could not distinguish what the strange thing might be. As I stood staring, the door into the garden opened, and the manservant appeared. We looked at each other. Then ideas began to come. Has Mr. gone out that way? Said I. No, sir. No one has come out this way. I was expecting to find him here. At that, I understood. At the risk of disappointing Richardson, I stayed on, waiting for the time traveler, waiting for the second, perhaps still stranger story, and the specimens and photographs he would bring with him. But I am beginning now to fear that I must wait a lifetime. The time traveler vanished 3 years ago, and as everybody knows now, he has never returned. Epilogue. One cannot choose but wonder, will he ever return? It may be that he swept back into the past and fell among the blood-drinking, hairy savages of the age of unpolished stone, into the abysses of the Cretaceous sea, or among the grotesque saurians, the huge reptilian brutes of the Jurassic times. He may even now, if I may use the phrase, be wandering on some plesiosaurus haunted
using the Crazy Art black for the buttons.
The lonely saline lakes of the Triassic age. Or did he go forward into one of the nearer ages, in which men are still men, but with the riddles of our own time answered and its wearisome problems solved? Into the manhood of the race. For I,
now
for my own
his
part,
hoodie.
cannot think that these latter days of weak
I'm using the
fragmentary theory,
Premier Color red for his hoodie.
Man's culminating time. I say, for my own part, he, I know, for the question had been discussed among us long before the time machine was made, thought but cheerlessly of the advancement of mankind, and saw in the growing pile of civilization only a foolish heaping that must inevitably fall back upon and destroy its makers in the end. If that is so, it remains for us to live as though it were not so. But to me, the future is still black and blank, is a vast ignorance, lit at a few casual places by the memory of his story. And I have by me, for my comfort, 2 strange white flowers, shriveled now, and brown and flat and brittle, to witness that even when mind and strength had gone, Gratitude and a mutual tenderness still lived on in the heart of man. The End of the Time Machine by H.G. Wells.
That was a good book. A real good book. Let's try to find another one. I go always, forever love. The Time Machine. I'm telling you, I will always love that. The First Man in the Moon. That's H.G. Wells too.
The First Man in the Moon. This is a LibriVox recording. All LibriVox recordings are in the public domain. For more information or to volunteer, please visit LibriVox.org. This recording is by Mark Smith of Simpsonville, South Carolina. The First Man in the Moon by H.G. Wells. Chapter 1. Mr. Bedford meets Mr. Cavour at Limby. As I sit down to write here, amidst the shadows of vine leaves under the blue sky of southern Italy, it comes to me with a certain quality of astonishment that my participation.
So now I just need to do his lips. I'm going to use this red on his lips because he looked like he had lipstick on. He looked like he had lipstick on. I'm going to lightly put it on here too. Not thick, but light. Okay, now I'm going to get my toasted toffee. And I'm going to lightly put that on. See how that come out.
And this book is the sequel. So utterly at variance is destiny with all the little plans of men. I may perhaps mention here.
And I'm going to see how this crazy white, how would it blend it out.
Sitting now surrounded by all the circumstances of wealth, there is a luxury in admitting my extremity. I can admit even that to a certain extent my disasters were conceivably of my own making. It may be there are directions in which I have some capacity, but the conduct of business operations is not among these. But in those days I was young, and my youth among other objectionable forms.
Yeah, this is my T.I. cartoon.
I am young still in years, but the things that have happened
whoever watched this video enjoyed it.
From my mind. Whether they have brought any wisdom to light